Und damit ein herzliches Willkommen zurück hier von der gamescom 2018 live aus der Budi-Bühne. Ich darf euch recht herzlich begrüßen mit einem spannenden Interviewpartner. Wir haben hohen Besuch. Wir haben jemanden da, der genau weiß, wie es in einem Publisher genau aussieht, was da so für Gewerke stattfinden und was da alles so innen drin passieren kann. Und deswegen freue ich mich sehr, ihn hier zu begrüßen. Wir haben Pete Hines da, der Senior Vice President of Global Marketing and
Close
Communication.
enough. Yeah, it's close enough.
Jesus. Wow, that's a title. That's a title. How are you doing, Pete?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm a little bit exhausted.
Yeah.
It's extremely...
Quakecon and then here.
Quakecon and then here. Yeah, we've talked a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
It is extremely warm, but I'm super excited to talk with you about all kind of stuff.
Awesome.
You've mentioned it. Quakecon was just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
How would you compare Quakecon to Gamescom?
It's completely different, except that it's also really hot here, like it was very hot in Dallas.
But
it's much more of a smaller. It's a very, I don't know. It's like a family that's grown up around id and id games, and this show's going to have like 500,000 attendees or something by the time it's done. QuakeCon across a number of days, will have 30,000 people come through. We have a BYOC that probably had 3,900 people in it. So it's definitely a lot smaller, but it's also what makes it fun. It's a lot more intimate, and it's people who love games like these guys do.
Perfect. Before we talk a little bit more about QuakeCon and Bethesda, please tell me, how are you doing? How was your Gamescom experience over the last couple of days?
I mostly spent it in a room in our
Okay.
business booth talking to people every half hour from 9 to 6. Isn't that right, Alistair?
That's right.
Because I'm not in charge of my own schedule, so I'm a putz, and I love my team, and I just show up and do what they tell me.
All right. So why are you still holding to QuakeCon with Gamescom just a few days away?
This is a really important show for us. I mean,
Why?
Because Germany is a huge market for us. We have a lot of fans in this territory. And for us as a company, there's a lot of other folks who come here. I mean, the fans are largely from Germany, but we get press from Russia and all throughout Europe. I had an interview with a Brazilian journalist today, a couple of guys from the U.S. Like, people come from all over. It's a big, important show, not just for Germany, but for the industry as a whole.
All right. So what is next? What is the next big thing for Bethesda this year? Fallout 76 will probably be the focus for the holiday season, right?
Yeah, pretty much that, and Blades are our two big new releases for this year. Elder Scrolls Blades, yeah.
Both titles are very interesting, especially for one element, multiplayer. The multiplayer focus for Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Legends, with that kind of elements, came up new heat to a discussion that is now around for several months. It is we're still not able to play with our friends across platforms. And
Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting.
Can I play as an Xbox player? Can I play with PlayStation players? Elder Scrolls Blades?
To be determined. It's not out yet. We'll see. But it is our intent that we certainly would like for that to be a game that allows for both cross-platform play and cross-platform progression.
What are your thoughts
Which are
about
two different things.
What are your thoughts about that discussion?
I think they're good, healthy discussions with all of our different partners on the different platforms we publish on, and I feel certain they know what we want and how we think it needs to work, and all of them are very willing to work with us and try and do what's necessary to give folks the best experience possible.
To give our audience a little bit more of context and to call them the problem by name, it is Sony with PlayStation who is blocking that kind of freedom. Well, at least Todd Howard said that to our colleagues at GameStar. And it seems like you've set an ultimatum to Sony. If they will not open the platform, Elder Scrolls Legends will not be released on PlayStation. I think your words were, I wrote them down to Game Informer, we cannot have a game that works one way across everywhere else except for on this one thing.
Yes, though I just want to point out, I did say that, and I did mean that, but I never referred to any platforms in particular. I'm just saying, as a rule, across all of the platforms, wherever we publish, whether it's Apple or Google or any of the consoles, that has been our ongoing requirement. But I definitely do not want to be singling anybody out in particular, and all of the folks that we work with, we definitely have those conversations, and if we're going to solve it. We're going to solve it there.
So there's no ultimatum for Sony or for any other platform
No, I
holders?
think I was pretty unequivocal. Like that, in particular, speaking of Elder Scrolls Legends, that game has to have cross-platform play and cross-platform progression to work on any platform. Like we were clear from the beginning with Apple, with Google, our own platform obviously works with it, but with Valve, everybody else, we said, look, this is how this game was designed. This is how it has to be. You cannot go to another platform and then suddenly have to start all over again because your cards are super. Are a big part of how you're playing the game, right? If we were to say, you mentioned Fortnite before. If I'm playing on one platform and I go to another platform and I have Fortnite, but I don't have my progression, okay, well, maybe I don't have a skin for my character or so forth, but the game is still the game. It's not like my performance in previous games is affecting how I play in that particular game. Legends is the exact opposite. Like your cards, your collection is everything. If you have a deck that you've been playing and you've been working on the ladder, you go to another platform and none of those cards are there, you're not playing the same game anymore. You're literally having to start over and collect all of those cards again. That's why the progression is so important to us.
And what if a platform is saying, okay, that's a cool idea, but we don't want to open up this cross-play thing, it's not cool. What are the consequences, especially for Elder Scrolls Blades?
Specifically for Blades, I don't know. I mean, there's a difference. See, the difference is with Legends, it's a game that's already out, and this is how it works, and this is how it's going to have to work for any other platform it comes to. With Blades, it could be different. It's because it's not quite the same thing, although it does carry a lot of common characteristics in terms of, well, you are leveling up your character and your inventory and all of that stuff that you have with you. If you're going to go and fight somebody else in the arena, well, that's the stuff you have to be able. Otherwise, you're once again you're starting over again. But again, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Game's not out yet. We still have lots of work to do that doesn't involve play or progression, and so we're going to continue to solve those problems while we work on some of this other stuff.
Does that count exclusively to Elder Scrolls Legends, or do you think that this crossplay thing will be a big and important feature for future Bethesda titles?
I don't know. Again, it depends game by game. I honestly don't know. There's some, like, if it's not a feature, are we going to do Rage 2? Like, well, yeah, it's a single-player game, so those things simply don't matter to Rage 2. So game by game, as a publisher, working with our developers, working with our partners, we will figure that stuff out. Because the truth is, there might be a lot of different, well, what if it's not this, but it's like this? It doesn't necessarily have to be binary where it's yes or no. It might be like, well, here's some things that we could allow, here's some things that might be a problem. Like, well, maybe that is okay. Let's wait and see.
Do you think that this will be a case someday that everyone can play together, regardless of the platform, regardless the game?
It is my belief that eventually that we as an industry are going to get there. Whether that's tomorrow, whether that's a year from now, whether it's 3 years from now, I do think that's where we're headed.
All right. I'm looking forward to play Fallout 76 someday. Hopefully across platforms with my friends there. But there are more Bethesda games that I would like to play. A new Wolfenstein game, for example. And have you ever played a German version of Wolfenstein?
I have.
What are your thoughts about that?
I greatly prefer the version that the rest of the world gets. Because that's the game as it was intended.
And have you followed some developments here in Germany lately? To give the audience another bit of context, lately there are some really interesting developments here in Germany. The German age rating board called USK published a statement which says that from now on it will be okay to release games with Nazi references if the content is strictly against those Nazi ideologies. And what do you think about that change of mind?
I think it's great. I think it's great for a couple of reasons. Number one, from my perspective, and I think from others in the industry as well, it puts video games on the same footing, as it should be, by the way, with things like TV shows and movies, where these kinds of things have been okay in Germany, but video games, for whatever reason, were getting treated differently. At least we're now getting treated the same as other forms of entertainment. So number one, I think that's really important for our industry and for developers as a whole. Number two, well, we make Wolfenstein, which is a game about killing Nazis, and we have in fact one completely different version of the game just for this territory that's different from everywhere else in the world. Not about like, well, how violent is it, or is there sexual content or language, but specifically all of these references that you're talking about. And so, we're anxious to see what this new rule means, because what they didn't say was all of these games can now be made available in Germany. What they said is they're now willing to review and consider each game on its own merits and whether or not it's okay. This is fairly new information, and so we have to now go through the process of, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean for New Colossus? What does it mean for New Order? Like, how about Wolfenstein 3D or any of the older, just what's going to be allowed and what's going to be considered. Obviously, our German office here is very keen to work with the USK and get answers to all this and provide information to them. Machine Games is very keen. They would like to only create one version of the game that works everywhere. So, it's a good sign, but honestly, it's just a step, and there's going to be many more steps we have to take before we have real answers about what games and what it means for each of them.
A lot of people outside ask me to ask you if there's a possibility Bethesda is considering to submit Wolfenstein 1 and 2 to the USK a second time for an uncut release here in Germany.
I think, again, we're viewing this not just across the more recent games, but across the entire franchise. Because, again, sort of to your point, there's games where people have said, well, I want to play the New Order or the New Colossus with the English voices and so forth. There is no sanitized version of the voices in English because, there's no reason for that to exist, because everywhere else where the English is available, it's okay to say Nazis and to do those kinds of things. So, but we want for all of the games, including ones that have never even been allowed to be released because they weren't sanitized at all, that if folks want to go back and see or play those older games, that hopefully we can make those available too. But again, it's a process. We will see. But I assure you, there are games. Our developers worked hard on them. We would like for all of them to have their day and to have folks have the ability to play them if we can.
Are you positive about that development?
No, absolutely not. I don't know a whole lot about government and processes and how that's. I've been working on getting games rated in the USK or in Germany for 19 years almost, for all of my time here at Bethesda. It is never an easy or straightforward process with any rating agency in any territory. You never know what's going to happen or what's going to come back, and we look at each other like, really? They had a problem with that, but they were okay with this? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, well, whatever. So I would not give certainty to anything. What I am certain of is that we're going to do everything we can to do what we can for our games.
Can you tell us a little bit more, or can you give us a little bit more insight about that process of rating between the rating board and the publisher? We're just seeing the rating, and okay, it's cool, but we have no idea what is going on behind the scenes.
A lot. Because there's different agencies all over the world. Each one has different standards. Each one has different points on the age scale. This territory says for 12. This one says for teens, right? They all have different scales and different what's okay or not okay. Some territories are more okay with sexual content, but less with violence. Some of them, drug references, are a big deal. So each one of them is different. And in every case, it is a process of, where possible, talking to them, showing to them early on, okay, well, here's the content that we've got. Do you have any feedback for us on, do you foresee problems or issues? Because always we want to only have one version of everything that we are making, and we want to understand. You don't want to be surprised when you submit a rating and something comes back. You still get surprised. You just don't want to be to find out what there was a problem or issue, because it does also govern what my teams do in terms of marketing and talking about the game, what kind of websites you should be buying ads on, what kind of TV programs. If you expect that it's going to be a mature rated game, then you have to adhere to different standards. Sorry, I'm using ESRB parlance.
Totally fine.
18 plus versus 13 or 12 plus. There's different ways that you're allowed to advertise, or whether you have to, in the U.S., age gate your trailers or not. Well, sometimes we make games we're just making the game that we want to make, but we never know. Well, we kind of think this is mature, but maybe the violence isn't so bad. Maybe it'll get a teen rating. So we have to find out beforehand to give ourselves some idea of, should we be acting as if you're going to give this an older rating, or should we be acting as if you're going to give this a younger? Because oftentimes we don't know exactly where any agency is gonna come out with a rating.
All right. Okay. Are you happy with the development of Bethesda so far? where we had Quakecon, Fallout 76. At E3, you have announced the Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield, a completely new IP. What can we expect from Bethesda in the future? What is the vision of Bethesda in a field where games as a service is a big new thing, where new monetized models are appearing? What can we expect from Bethesda in the future?
Are we talking about the studio or the publisher?
Well, the studio... There are studios, and there's, I would say, the whole vision of the company.
Okay. Well, how about this? I'll start with the developer, and then we'll go wider to Bethesda as a publisher. So Bethesda Game Studios as a developer, yes, obviously 76 is a pretty big departure for them. They're known for big, epic, single-player, role-playing games. But 76 was a desire for them to address the #1 request that team has gotten. Again, since I've been there, on Morrowind, on Oblivion, Fallout 3, Skyrim, Fallout 4, it was always, will there be multiplayer? Will there be co-op? Can I play this with my friends? I wish I could play this with my friends. Could you add this? And so they finally decided, about 4 years ago, that they wanted to take a stab at making the kind of game they make, but with an eye towards online and multiplayer, and make a game that is different, but still a Fallout game, but making changes necessary for having a number of people, a few dozen people in each version of the world. That is a different thing for them. It is a bit of a shift in direction, but part of the reason that we wanted to talk about games like Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 was, well, number one, I'm tired of answering people's questions on Twitter where they keep trying to get me to give this information. We had filed a trademark for Starfield, so it was known that somebody was going to be making that. Todd had said a few years ago, yes, we're going to make Elder Scrolls 6, but we have 2 other games. We felt like with 76 being a departure, it was also a good idea for people to understand, like, this is not a brand new direction that the studio is going to move down forever. This is essentially something new that they wanted to try, but the next game is going to be Starfield. And again, also something new that they wanted to try. I've said before, not just specific to Bethesda Game Studios, but developers in general, don't want to feel like they're in a processing plant where they're just doing the same thing over and over again, whether that's a certain IP or a certain kind of game. They want to be able to be creative and try different things. 76 is one way for them to do that. It's a very different kind of game. Starfield is another. It's brand new IP. They're not beholden to rules or lore that were done before. They get to make up all of those things and experiment in doing a single-player RPG that's sci-fi as opposed to fantasy or post-apocalyptic. So it's a chance for that studio to lay out its roadmap for folks to say, hey, here's what we're doing. We're coming back to single-player RPGs for our next one. We are going to go to TES 6 after that, so people have an understanding of where they're going. Bethesda, as a publisher, we're going to continue to make lots of kind of games. We announced Fallout 76, and people were like, well, what happened to single-player games? You guys said single-player games. Like, look, we do as many, if not more, single-player games than anybody else of our kind or size anywhere in the industry. We did a ton of them last year: Prey, Wolfenstein, Evil Within. As I said, Bethesda Game Studios is making Starfield single player. We continue to support a game like Prey with new free modes and new DLC that is single player. We announced Wolfenstein, that's single player, but kind of to my point, they also wanted to try co-op because the game is about playing as one of BJ's twin sisters. And they were like, well, it'd also be kind of cool if you could play with the other twin sister, either by yourself or have somebody else control it. And they also wanted to see, well, what would co-op work? How would that work in one of our games? So we're going to continue to do a mix of things. We are always largely driven by our devs and the ideas that they have, whether that's an existing IP or they want to reboot something like Machine Games did with Wolfenstein, or they want to try something completely new. We've done a lot of new IPs, Dishonored and The Evil Within and a lot of others. So we're going to continue to do a mix of all of those things. Yeah, some of them are going to look like games as a service, but we're also very used to that. Like, if you look at all the things Bethesda Game Studios has done, the engagement with those games isn't usually measured in hours or days. Like, there are still people playing Morrowind from 2002, 16 years later, modding that game, playing mods, and the same is for Oblivion. And like, people play our games and games that our studios make for a really long time, and we put out new things, or we give them tools so that they can make their own new things and continue to live in these worlds and enjoy these games. So the idea of continuing to support a game after launch with new stuff is not particularly new or foreign. It's become more of a thing lately, but we've always sort of had our eye on it and thought about those things, and the way in which we decide to do it for some games is going to be different than others. Sometimes, like with Fallout 76, we're going to come out and say, hey, all of the content and DLC we put out for this game is going to be free on an ongoing basis. And yes, we're going to do microtransactions because it helps pay for the dev cost, but it's all cosmetic and it's all available. If you want to use the currency you earn in-game as a reward, any of the cosmetic stuff you want, you don't have to spend any of your own money if you don't want to. You can earn it in the game. We might do something different for another game. We might do paid DLC and not do any kind of transactions. It's up to each developer and each game to figure out what is the right balance and what kind of experience are they trying to provide.
The single-player, multiplayer thing is kind of interesting. What kind of feedback have you got after you announced the concept of Fallout 76? Was it more skeptical because they know Fallout as a big single-player game? What kind of feedback? I can't imagine how the people are reacting when you say, okay, it's Fallout 76, it is multiplayer, it is no single player, and there are microtransactions. I can imagine that the people are going nuts.
Here is, I could not be more excited. I'm peeing my pants. Here is, I hate you and everything about you. And our feedback was the entire spectrum. Most of it falls, over here. There's people who absolutely say, I don't want anything to do with an online game. Okay, that's totally fine. We don't make a game that we're certain every person in gaming is going to want to play. We make stuff that we're excited about, and we think that we're going to find an audience that will be excited about it too. As we've talked more about the game and folks start to understand it, I think we started to answer some of the questions and some of the concerns for people who are like, okay, well, it sounds cool, but a big one was griefing. Like, well, how are you going to handle people who are constantly just hunting me down and killing us over and over again? Like, look, we're not making Fortnite. We're not making PUBG. 76 is not everybody drops on the map and then the last person standing wins. It's a role-playing game. You are leveling up your character. You're doing quests. You can build a base with your camp or not. You can just explore. When I play test the game, I play almost entirely solo. I've grouped up with folks one time. Otherwise, I play it by myself because I want to see what that experience is like, because that's how I'm used to playing games anyway, even ones that are online, because my schedule is, I'm with you going to all these shows, and who knows when I'm around, and people, trying to find time to group up with them. It's just easier if I go, I'll play when I got time and on my own schedule, and I don't have to worry about working around anybody else. So it's a game that you can decide to play how you want, but it is the fun and the tension of the other characters in the game are real people. And for those who aren't familiar, it's not the number of people we're talking about in a version of the game, and the game is 4 times the size of Fallout 4, so it's a really big map. But you're talking about a couple dozen people, whatever the number the team ends up deciding on. It could be 24 or 36, but on this huge map, it's not like you're just constantly bumping into people left and right. You can go a long time. You can go hours without ever coming across anybody. But if you do come across them, you can decide. Do you want to trade with them? Do you want to group up with them? There's benefits to both. Do you want to fight them? Whatever you want.
All right, when Fallout 76 will come out in a few months, would you say that Rocket Beans TV will get a review copy before release?
Well, yeah, you can have it whenever you want, but the servers don't go live until launch day. So, it's a server-based game, so you can have the disc and put it under your pillow and have dinner with it or whatever you want, but the game doesn't go live until launch day, so you can't really do anything with it.
And what is with the new Wolfenstein game that will be uncut in Germany? Will that review copy arrive?
I would say that we will continue to look at it, but if you go back and look, we had reviews out and review copies out before Wolfenstein ever came out. There were reviews up all around the world, and the same is true for The Evil Within. But the same wasn't true for other games where that wasn't as possible, and we will continue to look at it. But folks are going to get a chance to play the game. Anybody who wants to can pre-order the game and play the entire game, anything they want, for a whole week. So you can see for yourself in October how good it is and what it's like. You don't have to take my word for it or your word for it or wait for a review. You can play it for yourself and see how fun you think it is and what parts of it you might like or don't like. It's going to be a constantly evolving, ongoing game, and we're going to be taking player feedback nonstop from beta for years to come to figure out what we should change, what we should add, what we should do.
All right, Pete, thank you so much for your honest answers, for your time. It was a pleasure to talk with you. I wish you all the best for Fallout 76, for Elder Scrolls Blades, and for all the games that will be coming out in the next couple of years. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Das war Pete Hines, unser Interview hier mit dem netten Menschen von Bethesda. Super interessant. Wenn ihr Fragen habt, weitere Fragen, stellt sie uns die natürlich sehr, sehr gerne in den Kommentaren, sei es im Forum oder auch im Reddit oder unter dem Hashtag Beanscom. Da könnt ihr alles weitere dazu schreiben. Wir werden das hoffentlich aufgreifen hier, wenn wir die Zeit und die Kraft vor allem auch finden und das hier in diese Sendung mit einfließen lassen. Jetzt geht es auf jeden Fall weiter mit unserer Beanscom. Ich sage viel Spaß, bis bald und gute Nacht, guten Morgen, bis dann.